Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour, and this is episode 278 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast. In this first segment, it will just be me alone here in the studio, taking you through all your Montreal Canadiens news. I've got some games to talk about. I'll give you your roster updates. We'll talk about prospects, and then end this segment with some news from around the NHL. In segment 2, that's when the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Mr. Rick Stevens, is going to step in, alongside Amy Johnson, who will welcome Russ Cohen to the studio. Russ Cohen is a very respected sports author, hockey analyst, and prospect evaluator. Russ contributes to Sirius XM NHL Radio, EP Rinkside, and Off the Post Radio podcast. He'll talk about Montreal Canadiens prospects and some of the prospects available at the 2024 draft. You're going to want to stick around for that. And then in segment 3, it'll just be me once again taking you through the Have Your Say segment. I like to turn it over to our listeners and ask you this question, our Canadiens Connection question of the week. Which prospect available in the 2024 draft excites you the most? I want to make sure that I get a chance to hear from you, and all of us here at Rocket Sports love to hear from all of our listeners. So if you have something to say to us, you can reach out to us by text, actually. We have a very special Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. Also, you can reach out to us by email. It's hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. That's hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. And we have social media. You can check us out there. Make sure that you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, check out the website, canadiensconnection.fm. Please make sure that you check out our comprehensive game previews and post-game recaps for every Montreal Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. And since last week, Montreal has played a few games, 3 games this past week, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. Instead of going through game by game, what I'll do is I'll highlight one particular game that I thought the Montreal Canadiens performed pretty well in, and I'll highlight a player of the week. And this week, I'm going to go all the way back to January the 6th as the Montreal Canadiens welcomed the New York Rangers to the Bell Center, and they come away with a shootout victory. 4-3 in the shootout. The Montreal Canadiens win that one. They got off to a 3-0 lead, actually, against this New York Rangers team, who are pretty good. They have some good goaltending as well. And unfortunately for Montreal, blowing leads has been a pretty common struggle throughout this week and throughout this whole season, to be honest. Consistency issues are a bit of a problem. But they did manage to hang on, bring things to the shootout, and they won that one. Sam Montembeault played one of his better games this season, making over 40 saves, and a highlight reel stick save in the shootout. You're going to want to check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. I thought Montembeault looked pretty great in that one. And actually, Montreal got to the shootout twice this week, as they did on January the 10th. They did go to the shootout against the Philadelphia Flyers. Fortunately, a losing effort in that one. But I'd like to highlight my player of the week as well. And for this week, Sean Monahan. That is a player that I thought played very, very well overall this week. He scored against the Rangers. He scored again against the Philadelphia Flyers. Back-to-back games. And honestly, defensively, very solid as well. So just a nice little shout out to one Sean Monahan, who had a great week. And with that, let's take a look at our roster news. Quite a bit has actually happened for the Montreal Canadiens this past week here. The Canadiens placed defenseman Gustav Lindstrom on waivers, and he was claimed by the Anaheim Ducks on Wednesday. So that freed up a contract spot for them. They're now down to 45 contracts. And in about 14 games, Gustav Lindstrom put up 4 points. They acquired Gustav Lindstrom from the Detroit Red Wings as part of the Jeff Petrie trade. Lindstrom also played 4 games in Laval. And to be honest, this was a piece that I thought was probably going to get moved at the deadline. More of a depth player, 7th defenseman, a guy that was going to bounce up and down between the AHL and NHL. So not a huge loss for the Montreal Canadiens. Like I said, this is pretty good for them to be able to free up a contract spot, free up a roster spot as well. But unfortunately, this was a piece where I thought they could get some kind of an asset back for him. So kind of unfortunate that he was claimed on waivers, and I'm sure the Anaheim Ducks are going to be pretty happy to have this depth defenseman. On Thursday night, January the 11th, the Canadiens activated Raphael Harvey-Pinard off of IR. He has been out and unable to play since November the 14th, but he did suit up against the San Jose Sharks on January 11th. So nice to see him get back to the lineup. Tough season for him with all the injuries. Still looking for him to maybe come into what he was last season, be more the player that he was when he was called up and actually put up quite a few points in the season before. But like I said, tough break for Raphael Harvey-Pinard this year with all the injury troubles. Bit of a minor trade as well for the Montreal Canadiens. They and the Buffalo Sabres collaborated on a trade, sending one Filip Cederquist to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for future considerations. Cederquist has played 19 games with the Rochester Americans this year, putting up 4 points. Cederquist was selected in the 5th round, 143rd overall by the Buffalo Sabres in the 2019 NHL entry draft. This is definitely an AHL depth move. He's not played in the NHL yet, so I would be surprised to see him play in the NHL. I think it would take a lot more injuries for that to happen, but Montreal certainly looking for a body to go down and give them some depth in Laval. And on that note, I think it's a good time to get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
So each week, we like to highlight one Montreal Canadiens prospect, and this week, we're going to circle back and shine the spotlight on EHC Cloughton defenseman David Reinbacher, the 5th overall pick in 2023 from the Montreal Canadiens, the right shot defenseman that they absolutely coveted at that draft. And honestly, this season, he's had a bit of a rough go in Cloughton. He's had some injury issues, only getting into 19 games, putting up 6 points. Cloughton is actually a struggling team overall. Second last in the National League over in Switzerland, but he actually had a pretty good game the other night on January the 7th. He played 20 minutes and 13 seconds, put up 4 shots, looked pretty good in that one. His time on ice was pretty low coming into that game. And it wasn't until the game prior where he was actually able to get over the 20-minute mark. For the most part, he's been floating in and around 16 to 17 minutes. So it's been nice to see that he's starting to come back to form a little bit, hoping that he's fully recovered from that injury and maybe starts to put up more minutes. One of the reasons why the Montreal Canadiens did covet this defenseman is they said that he had an ability to eat up a lot of minutes on defense, so hoping that he continues to play around 20 minutes per night and get back to form, like I just said. It's been a struggle for that team, and I think kind of a rough season for that defenseman with all the injury trouble. Taking a look at the OHL, the Peterborough Petes traded Owen Beck to the Saginaw Spirit for Aiden Young and a second-round pick in 2025, a third-round pick in 2026, and a second-round pick in 2027. Saginaw Spirit will host the 2024 Memorial Cup. The Petes are a team that I think had a pretty good start, a little bit of a surprising start for them, but in the last couple of weeks, they've started to regress back into more what we were expecting. I don't think we were expecting them to be a great team. So an Owen Beck trade was really, we were just waiting for that one to happen. Owen Beck returned from the World Juniors after a pretty good time there, and he's looked pretty good so far in the OHL. Good season there, looking very mature, and I'm sure the Saginaw Spirit will be very excited to have him as they try to make a push for the Memorial Cup. And now we'll take a little look at the Laval Rocket, and I'll do the same thing that I did for the Montreal Canadiens. I'll highlight one game of the week that I thought was very exciting, and one player of the week that I thought had an absolutely outstanding performance. So my Rocket game of the week is a loss, actually, and nevertheless an exciting loss in overtime. 6-5 to the Utica Comets. High scoring, both teams putting up a lot of points there. Jacob Dobis was in net for the Laval Rocket, and he faced 37 shots. Certainly not a great defensive game for either team. And my player to highlight here is one Joshua Waugh. In that game, he put up 2 goals and 1 assist. He's had a bit of a point streak this past week, and he's actually right towards the top of the team when it comes to points, leading the way there. So certainly a great season so far for one Joshua Waugh. Tied for points at the moment, 30 on the season. It's actually the team lead alongside Brandon Gignac. And coming up, the Laval Rocket kind of have a lighter week. On the 13th of January, the Manitoba Moose will visit Laval. I'll actually be in attendance for that one. Looking forward to seeing my first Laval Rocket game of the season, and then a few days off in between before they face off against the Belleville Senators at home on the 19th. And the Laval Rocket have announced a trade. They have acquired defenseman Chris Jandrick from the Rochester Americans in exchange for defenseman Noah Lowen. He will report to the Trois-Rivières Lions. Jandrick had 8 points with the Jacksonville Icemen of the ECHL. He's got a tiny bit of AHL experience, so both teams just swapping out ECHL depth defensemen. The Habs have announced that their prospect Logan Mailloux has been selected to represent the Laval Rocket at the AHL All-Star Classic in San Jose. It'll be on February 4th to 5th. Logan Mailloux having an absolutely great campaign this season, putting up 19 points in 33 games and being an absolute anchor on that Laval defense. He's been a top pairing guy. He's had some good offensive numbers. He's probably been one of the better defensemen down there. So very excited to see Logan Mailloux is getting the honor of going to the AHL All-Star Game. A few other players that you might recognize going to that All-Star Game, specifically for that Northern Division that the Laval Rocket are included in. For the Toronto Marlies, Alex Steeves and Dennis Hildeby, the goaltender. For the Belleville Senators, Angus Cruikshank, Max Gannett, and one Yuri Kulich for the Rochester Americans, a guy that was drafted a few picks after Filip Mesar. He's had an absolutely great season in the AHL, and certainly a standout too at the World Juniors that went down just 2 weeks ago. Quite a few injuries in Laval as well. Sean Farrell has been announced to be out 6 to 8 weeks with an upper body injury. Kind of a shame. He's been pretty good for that Laval Rocket team. He's had 17 points in 24 games, and I think this is going to be a lot of offense now missing from that Laval Rocket lineup. And also Nathan Legaré is going to be out 7 to 8 weeks with a lower body injury. Gabriel Bourque is out indefinitely. This was not specified. And Brady Keeper is going to be out for 3 months with a lower body injury. So the injury bug travels from the Montreal Canadiens all the way down to the Laval Rocket. Moving down one league and going down the depth chart to the ECHL, the Trois-Rivières Lions have had a couple games this week, and it's been a struggle for them. It's been up, it's been down, but certainly something is not clicking lately. Sometimes it's the offense that is struggling. Sometimes it's the defense and the goaltending, and I'll do the same thing that I did for the two other teams, and I'll highlight one game of the week and one player of the week. The game of the week that I will highlight is a win, a 5-1 win against Worcester. The night before, actually, they played against Worcester and they lost 5-4. So nice to see them get a quick bounce back. They scored 4 goals in that second period, and honestly, a couple of standouts. Actually, I have 2 players to mention from this week for the Trois-Rivières Lions. First one's going to be Matthew Boucher. He returned to Trois-Rivières from the Belleville Senators. He was on an ATO there. He scored 1 goal and 2 assists in this one. And the other player I'd like to mention is Miguel Tourney, who's actually had a pretty good season too. He scored 2 goals in that one. Been very consistent offensively, and I think that having Matthew Boucher back in Trois-Rivières certainly helps, and be nice to see them find a little bit more consistency. Also, just a little reminder to everyone, we not only do the hockey news for the Montreal Canadiens, but we do the hockey news for the QMJHL, the Quebec Maritimes Hockey League, Junior Hockey League, rather. So you can find all your best English language coverage there. If you want to find content about the Canadiens prospects, go to thn.com/Montreal. If you want to find the best English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, go to thn.com/QMJHL. And our last little bit before we come to our first break, some hockey news from around the league. Starting things off, the Chicago Blackhawks have announced that forward Connor Bedard will be out for 6 to 8 weeks after surgery for a broken jaw. He was hit by the New Jersey Devils defenseman Brendan Smith last week. Bedard still leading the way for rookie scoring. He has 16 goals and 18 assists for 33 points, and that does mean that he will miss the All-Star game, so kind of unfortunate for him. And hoping he gets a nice quick recovery, and it'd be nice to see him back on the ice pretty soon. Some big news coming out of Toronto. They have announced that they re-signed forward William Nylander to an 8-year contract extension worth $92 million. That's an annual average of $11.5 million. That makes him the second highest player on the team, and now 53% of the cap at the moment is now tied up between 4 players: Tavares, Marner, Matthews, and Nylander. So the Leafs doubling down on that core 4. Honestly, if you're a Leafs fan, I think you kind of saw this one coming. Nylander really came into this season in a contract year, and he's easily been one of their better players. He's actually been one of their more consistent playoff performers as well, so I think they had to keep him. But how they're going to manage the rest of the roster with these 4 players making double digits in the millions, I have no idea. So it is what it is. The Toronto Maple Leafs kind of putting themselves in a difficult situation with those 4 players locked up long term with big numbers, but we'll see how they navigate the cap going forward. Big trade was announced this past week, kind of a surprise for everyone. The Philadelphia Flyers announced that they trade forward Cutter Gauthier to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for defenseman Jamie Drysdale and a second-round pick in 2025. Drysdale did appear in the Flyers lineup this past week and made his debut against the Montreal Canadiens on January the 10th. He picked up an assist in that one and actually looked pretty good. Unfortunately for the Philadelphia Flyers, the report is they were having some trouble meeting up with Cutter Gauthier and his camp. Perhaps Cutter Gauthier was not going to be willing to sign in Philadelphia, at least is the implication. So their hand was a little bit forced here and having to make a trade. And, well, oddly enough, there is a Montreal Canadiens connection. The report is the Flyers offered Cutter Gauthier to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for the 5th overall pick at the 2023 draft. Kent Hughes did decline that one. And in the past month, Danny Briere has quietly shopped around Cutter Gauthier to about 18 to 20 teams in the NHL. It's amazing that Danny Briere was able to keep so quiet about this. Danny Briere in the press conference says that he wanted to protect that player a little bit. He didn't want big news to be out there and any bad rumors to be floated out about him. I think Danny Briere did his best to recoup some good assets. Jamie Drysdale has had some injury trouble. He's had 3 seasons in the NHL. I think in his first season he played over 80 games. The last 2, not so much. But like I said, he looked pretty good in that Flyers lineup, and unfortunate for them that they had to move on from Cutter Gauthier. Anaheim, though, gets a very good forward to add to their mix. They have a lot of great young forwards there in Anaheim, so certainly a team to watch out for going forward. I wonder how much longer their rebuild's going to last for. And on the note of the Anaheim Ducks, and last thing I'll mention before we go into break, former Anaheim Duck Corey Perry met with Commissioner Gary Bettman and has found out that he's free to sign with any team that he wants. He's now a UFA. He left the Chicago Blackhawks organization this year to join the Player Assistance Program, and his contract was terminated. Coming from the Blackhawks, he engaged in conduct that is unacceptable and in violation of both the terms of his standard player contract and the Blackhawks' internal policies intended to promote professional and safe work environments. Corey Perry, in response to that, did release an apology, admitting his behavior was inappropriate and wrong, and said that he would work with some experts to discuss his struggles with alcohol. So kind of an unfortunate situation there for Corey Perry. We talked about this when it went down on the podcast. You feel bad for him. You hope that he's able to get the help that he needed, and now he's free to sign with any team. So the Corey Perry watch is now on. And with that, I think it's a good time to get to our first break here. We'll hear a message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then we'll get to the big topic segment, talking about prospects with Russ Cohen. Amy Johnson, Rick Stevens will be leading the way there. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. A big thank you to Michael Spinella for a wonderful first segment of the show. I am very pleased to be sitting in here for the second segment, but Michael will be back in the third segment, so he will be back just shortly. Don't forget, of course, to be sure you're following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. Bookmark us at canadiensconnection.fm. And of course, always be sure that you are subscribed to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. I am happy to be here in this segment because I am introducing and welcoming a very special guest to the show, a frequent visitor here at the Canadiens Connection, someone who we always enjoy talking to. He's a wealth of information, being as a draft analyst. You can find him on SiriusXM, Elite Prospects, a brand new website he just launched recently, NHLDraftBuzz.com, and one of the hosts of the Off the Post podcast. He is none other than Russ Cohen. Russ, Happy New Year, and it's great to have you back here on the show.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Rick.
And I should mention, talking about the fact that you're a draft analyst, you've just released version 1.0 of your draft list for this year, yes?
I did, yeah, on NHLDraftBuzz.com. I just put it out. First one for the new site and first one for this year's draft. And I struggled with it a little bit. It'll always change. There's guys on there, especially at the bottom. The bottom's always where there's a lot of movement. Usually like from 25 to 32, there's a lot of movement throughout the year.
Well, being as we're a little over a week coming off of the gold medal game for the World Juniors, we've all kind of had time to digest what we saw during the tournament. All the players have returned to their respective teams in the CHL or in the NCAA and so forth. So just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit about the Canadiens prospects and get your insight and reaction to their performances during the World Juniors and how their progression has been going. And I'm going to start with Owen Beck. He wasn't necessarily there as an offensive forward, certainly there to be a face-off specialist and play kind of a different role for Team Canada. What were your impressions of Owen Beck?
I mean, he did his role like he always does his role. I think he was the best face-off guy in the tournament. If not, he was up in the 60s. So I thought he did well with that. In the bottom six of that team, there probably wasn't going to be a lot of opportunity to score. It wasn't like a Canadian team of the past that was just completely loaded with scorers. So I felt like he was okay, but I felt like it was not the right role for him, especially, being a guy that wasn't going to be coming back. I was surprised that he was put in that role, but, the Canadiens coaching did what the Canadiens coaching was going to do.
Someone who did contribute to the offense it was Filip Mesar for Team Slovakia, co-led the Slovakians in points, and maybe a little more was expected out of the Slovakian team, but certainly as he's done for Kitchener this season, Filip Mesar delivered.
Yeah, he delivered. I've liked him since his draft year. I mean, I remember speaking to him at the Combine, and he was kind of like not happy with the year he had going into his draft year. So I think, he ended up in a good place with the Canadiens getting him. And then, I think he's had a nice progression ever since. Like you say, he's having a good year this year. I thought he had a good tournament. He looked strong, fast, more than a point a game guy. It's funny. They're really close-knit, those Slovakians. I remember I was doing an interview with Adam Gayon, and he said, oh, yeah, one of my buddies is asleep in the car. And I'm like, who? And he goes, Filip Mesar. I'm like, oh, that's funny, because they just drove back from something, and he was like, oh, you got to do an interview? Okay, I'll go to sleep. But he didn't go to sleep on the ice, and I really felt like he was noticeable, and I thought he had a great tournament.
Of course, Team USA were projected to be the team to beat at this year's tournament. They had an exceptionally deep roster, but goaltending, we kind of figured Trey Augustine would get tapped as almost the starter, but Jacob Fowler did get in for a couple of games. What were your impressions of how he performed early in the tournament?
Yeah, he was really important. I appreciate him. I was at camp, and I appreciate how down to earth he is. And just to kind of give you an example, last year's draft, I got a call from him. I was trying to interview him before the draft, and I got a call from him on day 2. And it was probably maybe an hour before the draft started. And he was like, sorry I didn't get back to you. We had won the championship. We were celebrating, and I saw your call there. He goes, can you talk now? And I was like, yeah. And I just started scribbling on whatever this interview was on a napkin or whatever. But I wanted to make sure, that I got it up there, because I felt like he was a really talented player, especially in that second round. And I think he showed well. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he won that shootout, right? And
yeah, that's right.
And he made some big stops in that. Right. There's some things he does better than Augustine. There's some things Augustine does better. Augustine was always going to be their guy, but I think Fowler in the future could be better. And I thought Fowler did well. I mean, if you look at the save percentage, maybe you're not going to love the number, but he was important. I don't think they could have gone where they went without him. And, it wasn't supposed to be that way, but Augustine got sick. So it really gave him an opportunity, and he was ready for it. Like, he knew both those guys are really good friends. So it was that situation where either one of them was going to complement the other. And so they were both ready.
And they were roommates, as I understand. And I thought Fowler he's billed as a goalie for the big stage, for the big moment. And he really came through in that shootout, as you said. Speaking of big players and big moments, Lane Hutson, what else can you say about him? And then finish that gold medal game off with a little bit of a scuffle and a takedown. Wow, he did it all and was named by the media to the World Junior All-Star team.
Yeah, I liked what he was doing in camp. I saw that he probably looked about 5 pounds stronger. His stick was very active. He was playing well. I think there's always going to be some criticism of him because he played with like Ryan Chesley, who's fantastic on his own. So it does really free him up to do other things where maybe some other guys in this tournament didn't have that chance on other teams. some of the other countries. Mm-hmm. But I thought he performed well, and then I thought when the lights were right on him, he was great, and I liked that he was punching up at the end. I had no idea he could do any of that. I was kidding around, calling him a warrior, but I feel like he's not going to be like this Cale Makar superstar that I think maybe some fans were hoping, but I think he's going to be a good NHL defenseman, and I think he will get points. I think he's somewhere in between like a Sam Girard and a Torrey Krug, and I think by showing us that feistiness shows us that he definitely can make it, and he's definitely, like I said, much stronger since his draft year. So let him get stronger. Don't rush him up. I know fans are going to want to rush him up because maybe they're a little not happy with the blue line of the Canadiens, but just give him this time. He needs it.
Absolutely. Throughout the tournament, we saw and heard a lot about in general, some of the top prospects like Celebrini, Lekaramaki, Cutter Gauthier, of course. Mm-hmm. But who was somebody who maybe is flying a little more under the radar as far as media attention and so forth, who really impressed you, who really stood out, someone not everybody's talking about?
Yeah, well, like Elite Prospects did a list, and on my original list of top defensemen, I had Maxime Sturback. And he's a Sabres prospect, and he played great. He could play in another World Juniors, which I think will be his fourth. So he's really strong. His offense is starting to come out a little bit. He was a point a game, and he was somebody that I felt like, wow, he really he impressed me. Isaac Howard seemed to impress me because in camp I wasn't sure where he was going to go. He was on that Nazar line, and because of that, since Nazar is so good in open ice and is able to really distribute the puck, he kind of showed his shooting prowess again with the speed and getting to the net, which I remember seeing in his draft year, but hadn't really seen as much since then. So I think now, because he wasn't showing it really at college either this year. And so that's something where I think if he takes that with him, then Tampa got a real good pick there too. So those are a couple of the guys.
Now, it's never too early to look at the draft prospects, draft coming in June. And as you said, you have a brand new list out, your top 32 at NHLDraftBuzz.com. As far as draft eligible prospects playing in the World Junior Tournament, the Canadiens aren't going to be. It's unlikely, unless they win the draft lottery, that they're going to be in the running for a Macklin Celebrini, maybe a Consta Helenius, who I thought was pretty good in the tournament. But who are some prospects that you saw that may be in the range where the Canadiens might be picking in June?
Well, I think there's three that played in the World Juniors that would be. Helenius is one of them. I thought that he came on late. He's on a team with a lot of NHL drafted guys, so he had to fight for his ice time, but he looked good and sturdy and good in the net, in front of the net with his hands. So that's somebody where, I mean, I have him ranked 5th, but he certainly could be in their range if they're like 8 or 9 or 10, and all of a sudden defensemen start to go. Gilles Bouillon did really well. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who was the youngest, I believe, of all their defensemen, and really at times really showed his offense and physical strength. So that was a nice surprise. I had interviewed him about a month and a half ago and was really impressed with that. Had seen him, a year or two ago, and his brother Shai is a good player, but I thought he was better. So that's somebody where, I think, he's moving up on everybody's list. I'm sure of that. And then Jesse Pulkkinen, 6'7" defenseman. He was impressive with his physical play. He was plastering some guys on the boards, but then he also had some moves where he could stick, get past some guys and get to the net. At 6'7", I don't think he's going to, get past 12 or 13 in this draft. So, that's another guy. So and I think Canadiens fans would be happy with any of them. But this is a really good draft for defensemen. So, if they're choosing between, Dickinson, Lashunov, or Silyev, or Bouillon, or Pulkkinen, they're going to have a nice choice of defensemen. And so that may be the sweet spot for them where they pick.
I wasn't familiar with Steve Bouillon until I saw him in this tournament, and was pretty impressed. Yeah. Adam Juracek is another defenseman in there. I think, though, our Canadiens Connection audience is going to be cringing a little bit when they hear that the Canadiens are going to be looking at another defenseman. But
you can't have too many.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Here's what I would say. Okay, I understand the struggles the Canadiens have, but I will say that. And I didn't get to watch the whole game because I was doing other things. But in that Ranger Canadiens game, when there was about 35 seconds left to go, and you saw Slavkovsky out there with Caulfield and Suzuki, and maybe Matheson's the guy right now, but there'll be somebody else later on. They were moving the puck really well, and they made Jonathan Quick make some fantastic saves just to get that game to overtime. And I think that was a little glimpse of what you might see down the road. And I think fans should look at that. Yeah,
I agree. And maybe one of the defensemen in the prospect pipeline to replace a Matheson, someone who, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to want to pass to Juraj Slavkovsky, but that's a whole other story. Listen, this draft list is one of my favorites to go to. You were on our show about a month before the draft last year. You told us not to sleep on Dalibor Dvorsky, and look at the way he's tearing it up with Sudbury this year. And so I think it's a really valuable resource, whether folks find your work on NHLDraftBuzz.com or Elite Prospects. It's going to be an exciting draft, and
at the Sphere, who knows?
At the Sphere.
I don't know what's going to happen at the Sphere. I'll be honest. I have my reservations, but as far as not reservations like it's going to be bad, like reservations like I'm ready to go, but I don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
You have to be ready for anything, right?
Yes.
Well, Russ, we always love having you on the show. Absolutely. We will be talking to you again before the draft as maybe some new versions of your draft list come out. But as Rick said, be sure you visit NHLDraftBuzz.com and check out version 1.0 from Russ Cohen. And we really look forward to having you back here again soon.
Be happy to. Thanks for having me on.
And as I said earlier, Michael Spinella will be back in the third segment. So we are going to take a quick break, get you ready for that. Michael will be back in the host chair. He'll be bringing you, of course, the Canadiens Connection question of the week, which you don't want to miss. So stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. Rocket Sports Media is currently recruiting talented, motivated, and committed people to join our team. If you're a student wishing to gain experience, a young professional interested in broadening your credentials, an experienced hockey mind looking for a platform to share your expertise, or a passionate fan looking to contribute to our publications by connecting with fellow hockey fans, we want to hear from you. If you are bright, loyal, passionate, and willing to dedicate yourself to a remarkable team, visit HabsHockeyReport.com and click the Join Our Team tab today. In every city around the world, sports fans flock to popular watering holes to share a few pints, some good grub, and to cheer for their team. Think your favorite sports bar deserves to be recognized? Or are you traveling to a new place and need to find the perfect spot to watch a game? HockeyPub.com is the answer. Find out where the best spots are in your city to eat, drink, and meet fellow fans. HockeyPub.com. Want the latest Habs news with game previews, reviews, and highlights? How about full coverage of development camps and special events? Looking to follow the Laval Rocket more closely this season? Or perhaps you'd like to learn more about team prospects? The Rocket Sports Media team has what you're looking for at thn.com/Montreal, the place where you'll find everything you need to be the most informed and connected Habs fan around. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 278 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out the website canadiensconnection.fm. Just a little reminder here to make sure that you tap that subscribe button. That way you never miss a single episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast. And text us anytime. The Rocket Sports text line is 5853-ROCKET. You can text that any time of day, 5853-ROCKET. Just want to give a little shout out to Russ Cohen. Always great to have him in the studio. Super knowledgeable. And we like to have him here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Big thank you to Amy Johnson and Rick Stevens for conducting that interview in the Big Topic segment. It's always fireworks when you get those three in the studio together. Rick, Amy, and Russ Cohen. Always amazing information there. And now I'm very excited for that upcoming draft. Once again, I'm Michael Spinella, here to lead you through this final segment. And honestly, these Montreal Canadiens can be pretty difficult to keep track of. But don't worry, Rocket Sports Media has you covered. You can find all of our coverage in one place. Here's what you need to know. Head over to thn.com/Montreal. That's the Hockey News Montreal. And you can find all of our game day posts, feature articles, prospects, Laval Rocket, Trois-Rivières Lions. You can find all that coverage in one place, thn.com/Montreal. Also, we have a YouTube channel. Just search at All Habs. Make sure you subscribe to that. Hit that like button on all of our content. Leave a comment. We love to hear from everyone. And if you want, hit that notification bell too. That way you never miss a single episode. Amy Johnson hosts a couple of great shows. Starting off, the Habs Hockey Report Show, the latest episode entitled "Could Habs Send Another Montreal Canadiens Player to the 2024 NHL All-Star Game?" Amy does a great job with that show. That's going to be your midweek fix on the Montreal Canadiens. If you want to know about Laval Rocket, she's got another show up there, the Rocket Hockey Report Show. The latest episode of that entitled "Jacky and Mayu, a dynamic top pair duo for the Laval Rocket." So great content there. Like I said, hit that like button, leave a comment, ask a question. Amy's great at responding to those, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, you can find this podcast on our YouTube channel as well. The last episode entitled "Can the Montreal Canadiens Navigate the Trade Deadline Competitively?" So once again, hit the like button, leave a comment. We get lots of great comments on YouTube, so keep that going for us. And also, a couple new things that we've been doing is watch along live streams on YouTube. So when there's some Habs games, sometimes we like to hop on YouTube for a live stream, and we like to provide some commentary. We like to take live questions in our chat. We have all sorts of great topics to go through. Last time we did it on January the 10th, on this last Wednesday, actually, Montreal versus Philadelphia. I was joined by my colleague Nathan, and we had a lot of fun with that one. Thank you all for tuning in if you did, and if you haven't, it's still up on our YouTube channel. You can tune in and watch the replay of that. We've got one other coming up at the end of the month on our own YouTube channel. Montreal takes on the New York Islanders on Thursday, January the 25th. I'm going to be joined by my colleague Nathan once again. We always have a lot of fun, so make sure you tune into that. Also, on the Hockey Podcast Network's YouTube channel, our Rocket Sports Media teammate Gustav is going to join Neil from the Devil State of Mind podcast on January the 17th versus the New Jersey Devils for another live stream over on the Hockey Podcast Network's YouTube channel, THPN. You'll be able to find that there. Gustav is super knowledgeable, so give him some support. Send in some Habs questions. He'll be more than happy to take all of those on that live stream. Finally, make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast, the Rocket Sports Radio Premier podcast on your favorite podcasting app, the Canadiens Connection. You can find every single episode at canadiensconnection.fm every single Saturday all year long. No breaks during the holidays, no breaks over the summer. We're here every single Saturday. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And now it's time to get to our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And to our listeners, we ask, which prospect available in the 2024 draft excites you the most? We want to hear from you. We just heard from Russ Cohen, so let us know who excites you the most coming up in the 2024 draft. We get all sorts of text, tweets, and emails throughout the week, so make sure that you continue to send those to us. Like I said, 5853-ROCKET is one of the best ways to get in touch with us. Also on social media at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, if you have a little bit more to say, email us, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. Coming up, the Habs have quite a busy week. On the 13th, they face Edmonton at home. On the 15th, they face Colorado at home. Then they go on the road on the 17th to meet up against the New Jersey Devils. They come back home to host Ottawa on the 18th. So 4 games within the span of next week, so it's going to be pretty busy. That's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure that you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in the player or on your favorite podcast app. That way you never miss a single episode. Also, share it on social media if you like what you heard today. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, January the 20th, for another great episode. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.